This has been an exceptionally bad year for farming in America. And, whenever Trump gives them money, that is the taxpayers' money. So, there's a lot of complaints about giving the black community reparations, but a lot of the money that goes to these farmers to help them out because they were flooded, part of that taxpayer money is from the black community. And that's going to get bigger because the flooding they had, that is going to become a lot more common each and every year. We had a really treacherous year. And I know out in the Midwest, they had snow, they had the floods, they had the heavy rains, and the river just cressing and the levees breaking. So they had a whole series of different events happening to them. But ladies and gentlemen, they have all kinds of help and safety nets in place. They have crop insurance. Trump gave them over $1 billion to help them out. And, this is crops that's still under a bunch of water out there in the Midwest. So these farmers, many of them are letting you know they can't even plant for this season because of all the flooding. So this season is pretty much lost, but you know what? Many of these farmers, most farmers who grow big commodity crops, those are crops that are worth $2-3 million, even more. Those crops are covered by insurance. So they have to buy crop insurance. So this was a pretty bad year for corn, soybeans, and wheat. So the federal government actually covers 60% of these farmers' premiums. The same people that try to talk to us about government handouts, well, they get government handouts. In fact, they covered so much for these farmers, you might as well say the farmers got reparations this year. I'm going to let you listen to this NPR audio.
When a disaster hits U.S. farmers, like the floods this spring in the Midwest, taxpayers end up paying part of the bill because of government-subsidized insurance. The U.S. Department of Agriculture now says as a result of climate change, the cost to taxpayers is likely to increase in the future. NPR's Dan Charles has the story.
Robert Henry is giving me a tour of the land where he'd love to be planting soybeans right now, near New Madrid, Missouri.
Smells kind of raunchy, don't it?
It's a swamp.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, look at this. It's water as far as I can see, covering this floodplain between the Mississippi River and the levees. Land where Henry normally grows crops.
Thousands and thousands of acres. And some of the best land in the world.
But he won't grow anything here this year. He even has a tractor and harvesting equipment still stranded on an island out in the middle of all that water. But here's the good news. He'll get a check from his crop insurance. Not as much money as he'd have gotten from a soybean crop, but enough to help him get by.
Which is better than going under,
Most grain farmers buy crop insurance. It's a good deal for them. The federal government pays most of the cost of the premiums. In fact, the federal government spends on average about $8 billion a year on crop insurance for farmers. It could be a lot more this year. USDA officials expect to pay up to $1 billion to farmers like Henry who couldn't plant their crops. Farmers who planted crops but get poor harvests will send their claims in later. Robert Henry's hoping that this year's flooding won't turn out to be a taste of the future.
It may be global warming, but I don't think so. I think we're in a cycle of wet, and we'll cycle out of it, and we'll be dry again.
There are billions of dollars riding on whether he's right. The scientists, of course, say the climate is changing. And a team of researchers at the U.S. Department of Agriculture just tried to figure out how it might affect these crop insurance payments. Economist Andrew Crane Drosh led the project.
We used 5 climate models, some of which are more optimistic and some of which are more pessimistic in terms of warming and precipitation change.
In general, these models show a future, 40 or 80 years from now, in which farmers harvest smaller amounts of the country's biggest crops, corn and soybeans.
Reductions in yield almost across the entire country.
That sounds bad, and it probably is for anybody who needs corn and soybeans. But for farmers, the picture is different because that smaller harvest sells for a higher price.
To the degree that climate change lowers production, it will increase the value because of basic supply and demand.
And the government has to pay bigger subsidies for crop insurance premiums. It's insuring something that's more valuable. Also, the models show more volatility, more booms and busts. So more farmer claims, more government payouts for bad harvests. Now, Crane Drosh is quick to point out this is not really a prediction. The models don't include all kinds of other things, like how much of the corn and soybean crop gets exported.
So there's just a lot of stuff that we can't capture, and that's why this work is only the beginning. There's a lot more to do on top of this.
His study is attracting attention, though, partly because the work may not continue, at least not right away or within the USDA. The USDA's Economic Research Service, which carried out this study, is getting relocated from Washington, D.C. to Kansas City. Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue says it'll save money and bring USDA operations closer to farmers. Critics say it's an attack on independent research, carried out in such a rush that it's forcing employees to quit rather than uproot their lives. Most of the authors of this report on climate change and crop insurance either have left the agency already or are planning to. Dan Charles, NPR News.
See?
And now, more from and
So, as you can see, these farmers are having a tough time, And I know this guy said he don't believe the climate change. I do, because too many things have happened this year that indicate that changes are definitely happening on the earth. And I don't know, it sounds like a dose of denial right there, but he has the right to feel any way he wants. The bottom line is we have seen some pretty treacherous weather through every season now. I don't think we have gone through a season and there was not some sort of disastrous weather during that season. So it don't look good. It don't look good. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't think farming in America is ever going to be the same. I think as the earth heats up and the storms become more massive, it's going to be very difficult for these people to remain in those areas that are getting heavily flooded to keep farming. Now, we're hearing talks about the heat cap, the heat dome that has been over the country. Now it's over Europe. And they said that thing is moving up to the Arctic. A heat dome over the Arctic? That's what's going to cause the sea levels to rise. And the temperature in the water is already record breaking. So as those things happen, the flooding, to me, in my opinion, is inevitable. Those things are going to happen whether these farmers like it or not. So they're going to have to make a decision on staying in those areas or possibly going to a different location to do their farming. I think being around those rivers, it's not going to be a good situation for them at all. I mean, you see what has happened so far this year. They've been flooded for 6 months. And some of those farms are still, the water is, the ground is so waterlogged, they can't plant nothing. That mess ain't going away. You can't wish that away. Good luck to you. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. I just don't think it's going to ever be the same in those areas. They can definitely expect more flooding. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.